So my background is mostly has been in factual television, a lot of the time at the BBC, but about 3 years ago now I stood for election to be chair of BAFTA, an organisation I'd been involved in for the previous few years, and I ended up getting elected, and therefore I was the second woman to chair BAFTA in 68 years. About time there was another one, you might say. And in my time, I've just finished the 2 years. I'm now deputy chair for a further year. And my time as chair of BAFTA, I suppose one of the big priorities for me was really about diversity. And diversity, within the film, television, games industries, diversity of all kinds, frankly. But each of those industries has its own diversity issues, and there are different emphases, I guess, in each one. But certainly for me, the disproportion between the number of women playing games and the number of women making games was very stark. And I know there has been some progress. So Creative Skill Set's latest employment survey indicates that the number of women in games is creeping up. It was 14%. The latest survey, it says 19%, but they've changed their methodology, so you can't really compare the figures. But nonetheless, you feel there's a little bit of progress. However, when I stand up in Tobacco Dock, as I have done for the last couple of years, and introduce the BAFTA Games Awards, I look around me and it's a pretty male audience, pretty white, pretty male. And I think actually there are more voices out there, there are more perspectives on the world that we're not hearing. And I think that, whatever way we want to count it, we have to admit there's a long way to go before we reach fairness and equality. So I'm sure that in the course of today, we're going to talk quite a lot about how things can change in the industry, what change needs to be in terms of the structures around us. But I want to talk a little bit to you today about what all of you, those of you who are women in the games industry, what you can do personally to progress in your careers. And in a way, I'm going to share with you some of the things which I guess I would have found useful to know earlier in my career, and which have dawned on me as I've gone through. So a bit of almost like advice to my former self, which, hopefully might prove interesting or useful. And I'll also talk a little bit about some of the things that BAFTA as an organisation is doing to help and support all of you as women in games. So entering the world of television, as I did in the 1980s, was very much like entering a male world. The 80s were very different. They were a time when people would tell sexist jokes, when they would tell racist jokes, when there was a kind of societal norms were very different from now. Things that wouldn't happen now. However, in a funny way, the prejudice was very open and clear-cut. And I think that hopefully we have moved on in lots of different ways. Lots of progress has been made. There are a lot more senior women, certainly in television. I've seen huge changes in the 30 years that I've been involved. But I would also say that sometimes the prejudice seems like it's moved underground. It hasn't completely disappeared. It's just harder to spot, and people are more savvy about what they would actually say. But it doesn't mean it's completely disappeared. I went through my BBC career, as I say, factual television. I then launched, set up and ran the BBC Academy, which was really training in the BBC for about 5 years. I ran that. And one of the things we did was respond to an academic survey, actually, by Liz Howell at City University, who showed that in terms of female experts on television, there were sometimes as many as 9 male experts for every 1 female expert. And she drew attention to this, and she went on and on doing it in a way which became really embarrassing for the broadcasters, quite frankly. So there was a sense we've got to do something about this. I was running the academy, and we ran some expert women training days, which were gathering women in technology, women in some of the areas that people said it's very, very hard to find expert women. And just, in a way, giving them a bit of camera training, a bit of radio training, getting them ready to be on air. But what was really interesting to me in that here we had these women who were preeminent in their fields. They were, really senior and expert. And nearly all of them were suffering from some kind of lack of confidence and even sort of imposter syndrome, waiting to be tapped on the shoulder and found out. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if the women in this room who are extraordinary academics, so smart, so brilliant, are suffering from imposter syndrome, what hope is there for the rest of us, quite honestly? So it really started me thinking. And I trained also as an executive coach around the same time. And I coach, and still do coach, a lot of senior women. And again, at some level, there is an issue about confidence, very, very often, even in women that you would not suspect that to be the case, women who really seem to be our success stories. So there's definitely something going on here. And in a funny way, I could also identify with it myself, because in the early part of my career, I would say that I definitely was held back by my own confidence issues. And one of them was about public speaking. So here I am today. You all look incredibly friendly. I think if you were actually to sort of wire me up and sort of test my blood pressure and my heart rate, it wouldn't be that high, quite frankly, because I feel very relaxed in front of such a lovely bunch of people. But for about the first 20 years of my career, if you'd asked me to do something like this, I'd have found an excuse, I'd have run away. And I talk about this because I realise an awful lot of people share this. Whether they admit it or not, they share it. And the more I talk about it, the more I discover that it's a very, very common thing, especially, I would say, amongst women. So I'm here to tell you that you can overcome it and you can build your confidence, and it's a skill like any other thing that you've done and skills that you've acquired in your life. What you have to do, I've discovered, is actually do the scary thing. You've got to do the scary thing enough that it becomes second nature, that it no longer holds the terror. This involves pain and effort, by the way, so this is not easy, this is not an easy solution. But you've got to make yourself do the thing that terrifies you the most until it doesn't terrify you anymore. I put myself through a kind of strange aversion therapy, where I took any opportunity to make a speech and to do any public speaking. And eventually I kind of got to the stage where I didn't mind it. And then I got to the stage where I actually really positively enjoyed it. And I put myself in one of my own courses at the BBC Academy, where you film yourself making a speech, which is, again, terrifying, watching yourself back. And you watch yourself back, you think, actually, objectively, this person is not that bad. So it is, again, very, very helpful if you're a producer, as I was, to see yourself in an objective sense. And it can be overcome. There's certain tricks as well in terms of speaking up at meetings. So I used to think it was okay to go to a meeting and not speak, because if I didn't speak, that was neutral. I hadn't put my foot in it. I hadn't said anything daft. No, it is incredibly dangerous to you and your career to go to a meeting and not speak. It's not neutral, it's negative. If you go there, you have to earn your place at the table. You have to speak up. And the thing is, it's also easier if you speak up early. Because if you're at an hour-long meeting and we're 55 minutes in and you haven't spoken yet, the time you do speak, everyone's going, oh my God, she speaks. What is she going to say? It's like so much hanging on the importance of what you're going to say. No, speak in the first 5 or 10 minutes. And I know this sounds like sort of mad, like what am I going to say? Doesn't really matter too much. Have you noticed that a lot of the men speak? Doesn't really matter what they're saying. The important thing is just to speak, and I bet you'll have something to say, and I bet you've got opinions, and I bet you'll be perfectly sensible. And the thing is also, I think if you're a bit inhibited and underconfident, you think it matters terribly what you're going to say. Nobody cares. The truth is, everybody's thinking about themselves, right? They're not thinking about you. They don't really care about you. They've sort of vaguely noticed you. You say something. 30 seconds after you finish speaking, they've forgotten what you've said, okay? So it doesn't really matter. And in a way, I think underconfidence is a sort of weird form of narcissism, because you almost think it's too important what you're going to say. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, I promise you. So I kind of do know this. The other thing is, if you come to something like this now, I would have come to something like this, I wouldn't have spoken all day or put my hand up or asked a question, right? But I discovered a way to help myself do this, was to sit at the front. Now, there's far, far more of you at the back in this room than there are at the front. The people at the front, if you were to ask me a question now, you would feel like we're only a short distance away. This is quite an intimate situation. It's not too scary. You're completely unaware, frankly, of the, many, many dozen people behind you. And so that feels less intimidating. If somebody right at the back would ask a question, they've got to sort of look down across the whole bunch of people and think, oh, look at all those people who are listening to what I'm going to say. So, I find a trick was always to sit at the front, and it makes it much easier to actually participate. Just saying. These are things that it took me sort of decades to actually work out, so I pass them on. The other thing is that it is really, really helpful to give yourself emotional support in anything you do. So find yourself allies, find yourself mates, other people. They might be in the firm you work in, they might be people who are doing similar jobs in other firms. But give yourself a network of supportive people that you can talk to, that you can share things with, that you can be, vent your frustrations with, and who are going to understand and be sympathetic. So I find that incredibly important. And actually, when I got more senior and was able to build a team around me, I always built a team that, we were a team and we were in it together. And that enabled me to do some really, really difficult and quite sort of painful things, because at least I knew I had some support around me. So that to me anyway is very important. And also finding role models. So sometimes it's hard when you look ahead of you, and particularly in games there aren't that many senior women, but there are some. And if you think about, well, who could I learn from? Who would I like to be? Who could teach me stuff? I think that looking for those either role models that you can think, oh, they handle it really well, or even mentors. And it took me a while to realize that it's okay to walk up to somebody that you really rate and say, really admire your work, whatever, but would you be my mentor? Now, they may say no, and you do not take this personally, okay? Because they probably get loads of requests. It's not about you, it doesn't matter. That's okay, try somebody else. But they might just say yes. And, it's okay as a thing to do, and nobody's going to think the worst of you for doing it. They'll just think, oh, how enterprising, and I really recommend that. And talking about the public speaking, so then, of course, I plunged myself into chair of BAFTA, where I have to make at least 2 or 3 speeches a week, which is going from where I came from. So, that was the other extreme. And sometimes people have said, I could never be chair of BAFTA because you have to do things like open the film awards at the Royal Opera House, where you've got, all of the film stars, Leonardo DiCaprio in front of you, and Tom Hiddleston, and all these people, so they're all sitting there staring up at you, and you walk out on this stage and you're the first person that speaks, and you welcome everybody and you make the speech. And people said to me I would not go for chair because I would have to do that. So I thought, no, I'm going to bloody well do it. So I rehearsed in the afternoon. The first year I was doing the Film Awards speech. And it's a real biggie, because there you are at the Royal Opera House, you've got all the tiers of seats, but they're all empty at that stage, and you can rehearse, you read your auto cue. It's all fine. By the time I came to the actual evening, what has happened was there was a Perspex lectern that I had to speak at, which had the microphones on it. Kasabian were playing the opening number in the Film Awards. They had set up in the interim between the rehearsal and the actual night. So they had put all their drum kit, all their amps, everything was all over the stage. I walked out on stage, I couldn't see my lectern. It had completely disappeared under the lights. And plus the stage was cluttered with stuff. And so I walked out, this kind of most terrifying thing I was about to do, and I couldn't see where I was supposed to go. And eventually I did look further up stage, and there it was. So that was all right. I did actually get there, and I was able to read the auto cue. It all went fine. But afterwards somebody said to me, the only moment when I thought maybe you were a bit nervous was you walked out onto stage really, really slowly.
That was because I didn't know where the hell I was going.
Anyway, but that was a sort of slight baptism of fire, but I kind of got through that. The other thing is that, as you move up the industry and you get into positions of authority and you have people working for you and all the rest of it, some women, some men as well, but some women have a problem with authority, and they think they've got these old models of authority in their head about what you're supposed to be if you're a leader, what you're supposed to be if you're a manager. And they're thinking, oh my God, I've got to do this Oscar-winning performance on a daily basis and be this kind of strutting, shouting, decisive, crazy person who's, you know, because that's what they've seen as a leader. And what in my coaching, one of the kind of reassuring things that I'm able to say to people is, you don't have to do any of that. You can be yourself, literally. You can be yourself. You might be a slightly larger version of yourself, or you might emphasize certain qualities, but it's your model of authority, it's your model of leadership. You don't have to be the way maybe you've seen other people do it in the past. And I think that's one of the things about getting more women into authority and into leadership, is we can do it in a different way. It doesn't have to be, you know, the male model or what some men do. So I think giving ourselves confidence that way, but also there's something great about authority, which somebody did said to me very early on. If you assume you've got authority, you've got authority, you know? And it is the most amazing thing. If you just are completely secure about it, you want people to do things, you ask them to do it, they'll do it, you know, because you were invested with that authority. You don't have to be somebody different to do it. And if you're communicating uncertainty about, oh God, I'm not sure if they're really good, then they sort of worry, maybe I shouldn't do what this person's saying. But just assume it. And it's a sort of like act it till you can really be it. That works better than it has any right to, by the way. That's always a good tip. And the other thing I want to say is really about resilience. It is hard being a pioneer, and it takes a toll. So, you know, all of us, if you're in senior positions, any positions within an industry, particularly if there aren't many people who look like you around, you know, you have to be resilient. And I've had moments in my career, and I was running, say, the features department at the BBC, and it was merging with the documentaries department. The documentaries department, really, a lot of them did not want to merge with the features department. And they wrote a petition saying that I should not take over the department, that we should not merge. And they sent it to senior management. And they came to see me to say, it's nothing personal, Anne, but we've sent a petition against this merger to senior management. It's going, okay, it feels quite personal, actually. Feeling a little personal. Thank you for coming, nonetheless. But but what was really interesting was I actually could understand their fears. And I could understand, and I got to know but deliberately a lot of those people who were behind that petition. Some of the people who signed the petition actually have become dear friends. Others not, by the way. I couldn't convert them all. Some of them left us. But others decided to get on board and trusted us, and you know, and so in a way, I didn't in the end take it personally, and it was right not to, because it was a product of the particular time that we're in. But again, that emotional support from other people in the team have enabled me to do difficult things like redundancies and, you know, changes and so on to the organisations I've run without falling apart. And a very good bit of advice, again, I was given, which is relevant to resilience. John Nicholson at Nicholson McBride said this at a talk I went to. Diversify the sources of your self-esteem. Okay? Diversify the sources of your self-esteem. So in other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So don't marry the job. Don't become obsessional about one part of your life, because if that goes wrong, what else have you got? And a lot of the women that, you know, I saw and worked with at the BBC when I first joined in the 80s had sort of had to marry the job. They had nothing else going on much in their lives, and it was terrible then when the job came to an end. So the more things you have going on, it can be your dog, it can be your relationships, it can be your hobbies, it can be the fact you love to go for long walks, doesn't matter. And if you've got many sources of self-esteem, that will help you ride out the rough times. And mutual support, you know, occasions like this where you've got other people in the room, really building up those relationships and networks. And in order to get on, I also tell people that they should be pushy with charm. Now, so in order to sadly, our virtues are not obvious to everyone if we kind of sit in a small room and just think, we'll do this good work and eventually someone will notice us and it'll be great. They don't. So you have to kind of get out there. And this comes hard to some of us who've actually sort of feel like you're brought up to be modest and to say, oh, your painting's much better than my painting, and you're doing this much better. So it's a kind of inbuilt female thing we don't like to boast. So we need to get over this a bit, okay? And we definitely need to be a bit pushy. Pushy, the thing is, if you're just pushy, then you're just obnoxious and nobody wants to know you, okay? So if you're just charming, then nobody notices you and you're charming and lovely, but in a corner. So the combination of pushy with charm is what you need to be in order to get on. This is the people who've had that combination of the people who've risen, as far as I can see. Because the thing is, people don't actually mind you being pushy. They remember being pushy themselves. But if you do it in a lovely way, with a bit of emotional intelligence, then you can get away with it and they won't take it against you. And then the other thing is always to sort of have a kind of positive energy. There's lots in this industry that we can get bitter about, okay? We could spend our time being bitter, we can go in a downward cycle. Don't get bitter. Or if you do get bitter, keep it to yourself. Project positivity and help other people as well, particularly help other women get on, and be generous, be enabling. I think that's really important. People take you at your own estimation, so don't run yourself down. I used to have people who in the department who would go and say, oh, I'm really not very good at developing ideas. They don't think, oh, Jane is a lovely person and she's probably brilliant at developing ideas. They just think, it's amazing she's doing what she's doing if she's no good at that. So never undersell yourself. And the other thing is be brave. So if you're in a dilemma, it could be, do you want to go water skiing? It could be, do you want to sort of develop this new product? Whatever it may be, something that makes you a bit nervous because it's not something you've done before. I'd really say favour yes over no. Favour yes, and take the risk. So don't always say yes. There are definitely some things you should say no to, by the way. But if it's a dilemma and you think, oh, do I dare? Say yes if you possibly can. I think that you have to push yourself a bit in order to get yourself out of your comfort zone, and that's when you learn the most. So with all of this, BAFTA, getting back to BAFTA wants to help you, okay? We want to have a more diverse industry. We believe in diversity in the widest sense, and it's not just about fairness, it's about creativity, so that we get all the voices heard, so that we hear from every single one of you with all the diverse experience and backstory that each of you has got, because we don't want to hear from a narrow demographic and see the world through their eyes, because that will distort the way everybody thinks. And BAFTA is a charity. Not many people know that. They think of us as swanky awards and champagne and red carpets, and of course there is quite a lot of that, thank God. But we are also a charity, and we do a lot with new talent, and we do a lot to help inspire and help the quality in all of the industries we look after. And in games, we're involved with new talent right from school age. So we've got the BAFTA Young Games Designers competition, and that's for 10 to 18-year-olds, so getting right into the schools. And we make big efforts to attract female entrants. We use a lot of female role models so that they can really see that you can have a great career as a woman in this industry. But interestingly, 47% of those who start an entry for the game concept competition are girls, but only 15% are girls who begin their game making entries. So there's something going on there. Our challenge is to really encourage girls into actively making the games, and that this is a good career option for them. So if there's anybody in the audience who would like to volunteer to be on one of our juries, or if you think your company might support Young Game Designer, then definitely get in touch with us. We've got some details up here on the BAFTA website. So beyond school, but still in education, BAFTA runs a scholarship program, and this pays for people's postgraduate study to get them into the games, film or TV industry. We give them mentors, we give them networks. Elizabeth Mercury was, is she here? There you are. Hello, hello. Well, I remember being on your scholarship interview, and I recall it very well. And, you know, she's done stunningly, and she's a great ambassador for the BAFTA scholarship scheme. So be like her. There's lots of, we were looking for great people to go on those courses every year. And once you're in the industry, you need to be able to access the best expertise and information. So there's a massive free resource out there, which is the BAFTA Guru site. Have a look at it. There's lots there from previous award winners, previous nominees, which they're sharing with you. So really check that out. And BAFTA Guru has given birth to Guru Live, which is a 3-day event which we ran for the first time this year in BAFTA's headquarters in Piccadilly. And it's all about information, inspiration. There's a whole day devoted to games, and it's really for people starting in the games industry. We had 2,800 people, 25 sessions, and 56% of the audience of the people who participated were women. And 99%, my God, thought it was good or excellent, so we'll be running it again. So if you're somebody who's just starting out, maybe you've got less than 2 years in the industry, try applying to get along to Guru Live, you won't regret it. And our headline and maybe our most glamorous new talent event is Breakthrough Brits, because it's sponsored by Burberry, and we do lots of sort of a glossy brochure and promoting it. And that's really about for people who are showing great promise, and we're going to take them to the next stage in their industry, make lots of introductions for them, really give them a platform. So every year we've championed new female voices in games, such as Catherine Woolley, Jessica Saunders, Charo Dissot, and Sophia George. So you can actually apply yourself to be, you can say, I am a Breakthrough Brit. This is going in the not modest thing that we've been talking about. You can apply next March, and you can sign up to our Twitter and to our newsletter, which will remind you of dates. Or you can recommend, if you're feeling very generous, you can recommend somebody else as well. For those with more than a couple of years in the games industry, there's BAFTA Crew. So yay, we have some BAFTA Crew members here today, which is our professional network and masterclass program. And we've got 146 members now across all sectors, but we've got a really great active female group who are emerging in games, some of them working in cutting-edge technology, VR, games engines, and applications for the new intake are open in January. So again, follow us on Twitter and so on to find out, to be reminded of that. But most of all, for those of you who've got a bit more experience, say 5 years professional experience in games, we would love you to become a full BAFTA Games member. So we're actively recruiting for this at the moment. And you can find out more on the website behind me. We really want to expand the games section of BAFTA. It's something we really believe in, and we don't have enough female games members at the moment. So please, please, if you've got that experience and you meet the criteria, please join us.